Hey, this is Trevor from Halifax, calling in to say that I support Creative Control on Patreon because I think long-form arts journalism is a crucial part of music culture, and there's simply not enough of it out there today. Vish is a master interviewer, he lands great guests, and he has his finger on the pulse of the ever-changing music landscape, both here in Canada and abroad. For all of these reasons and many more, I think you should support Creative Control on Patreon too.
To make your flexible monthly donation to Creative Control, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control today. I'm Vish's wife, and I will love him no matter what you do. And now he has me on the record saying that.
Simone Schmidt is a multi-talented guitar player, lyricist, singer, poet, and artist based in Toronto, Ontario. A driving force in bands like $100 and The Highest Order, Schmidt has made some of their most outspoken and fascinating music under the name Fiverr. Most recently, Schmidt has partnered with Nova Scotia musicians Bianca Palmer, Jeremy Costello, and Nick Dorado to create an ensemble called Fiverr and the Atlantic School of Spontaneous Composition. Their latest release is You Wanted Country, Volume 1, which is out now via You've Changed Records, and prompted Schmidt and I to have a discussion about living in Ontario with the peril of the pandemic, capitalism, and the music biz functioning like a cartel, where their new band came from and where it's going, paying homage to great country songwriters, the future, and much more. A part of the Entertainment One network with the support of listeners like you who follow and subscribe to this podcast and spread the word about it and make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/Creative Control, and Massey Hall's concert film series live at masseyhall.com, where you can stream dozens of 30-minute films for free, including performances by past podcast guests like The Weather Station. Plus in-kind support from Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton. This is the 542nd episode of Creative Control, featuring the brilliant Simone Schmidt, with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hi, Simone. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm not bad. First of all, as I think I know where in the world you are, but I always ask, where in the world are you?
I'm in the city of Toronto.
City of Toronto. How are things going as we're speaking at the moment? For you, generally, given, our collective condition here, how are things going for you in Toronto?
I'm really fortunate because I rent an apartment for my brother. So I have this immense privilege of having a good relationship with my landlord.
Oh, okay.
At this moment. Yeah. And so, I feel secure and safe, but I feel like whenever I go outside, I'm reminded, I was doing some grocery deliveries on Monday, and I'm reminded that a lot of people don't have homes here. And so there are more tents under the Gardner Expressway than I've seen since the 90s. In the 90s, I think the Harris government put in these tickets for people who were camping outside. And so you weren't really allowed to have a tent outside, but now there are all these tents just plainly visible, and people are walking right up to you in the car and asking for money, and it's this really sad thing because I haven't really socialized myself not to roll down the window. It's the first time in my life where I have to just coldly say no because there's this virus and who knows who has it.
Right.
Could be me, could be them.
Right.
And so there's it's really sad in that way. And the city has said that they're going to open all these hotel rooms, but then my friends who are working shelters on the ground, they're saying there really haven't been any accommodations made for people certainly not enough. There's 7,000 people in the shelter system, and it's just like really scary time. So I think, I mean, when I look at a city or when I think about how's Toronto doing, I think about like people who are the most vulnerable in the city, and it's not, people aren't being taken care of right now. So
Are you able to, given the increase in unemployment figures, are you able to ascertain whether there is this is kind of a weird way of putting it, but is there a new cohort of homelessness or homeless people, people who have previously not been subjected to such conditions? Can you tell? Does that make any sense? I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question.
Yeah, like you're trying to figure out if like COVID-19, like, and the unemployment that has followed means that there are more people who are homeless. And as far as I can tell, like I think that anyone with status, so anyone who's like not afraid of the law in general, can't be evicted at this moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I think there are a lot of people without status who live in Toronto who, have no legal leases. And so they have nothing to fall back on. And that's a possibility. But I could only say that I can't answer that question. And I haven't read a statistic about an increased amount of homelessness.
Yeah, well, you mentioned more tents than you've ever seen before, and I wonder if those things, there's a correlation there. Yeah.
I think that because tents have been outlawed in Toronto for so long, we haven't seen them in plain sight. But at this moment in time, they're like a measure that are being used in order to allow people to social distance, perhaps, Yeah. And then on the flip side of this, I still like have read about accounts of people getting ticketed like $750 fines for not social distancing, people who are on the street and who are unsheltered. So I guess I don't know if like these things are consistently like happening across the board. That's like the one like massive reminder that like this virus brings us, is like actually how chaotic everything is.
Yeah. I read an article about you in the promotion cycle for this release that we're going to talk about in a few moments that suggested you had an undiagnosed cough. And I thought that is an interesting and stark detail to include. The journalist mentioned that you were having this remote conversation of some kind and that you were at your home in Toronto.
Yeah, I had a cough for like 3 weeks and now it's gone.
Okay,
so that's cool.
Okay, your health is relatively okay at the moment.
Yeah, it was a weird dry cough. I've never had this kind of cough before, and it came back twice, and it might come back again. But I have no idea what it is, and of course I can't actually go check. There's no testing around COVID, and then you're not supposed to burden your doctor with anything that's not life-threatening at this moment.
Right. So as long as you're not okay, so there's a chance you've had it or have it. Really, I guess there's a chance all of us do. But you have exhibited any others? Sorry, I'm not your doctor. This is not meant to be a checkup. Have you had any other symptoms? I'm just curious.
No.
Okay. All right. So you're okay. I mean, it's honestly. It's just nice to hear your voice. I haven't talked to you in a while, and I
know, big changes.
Right? Yes, I've moved out of Ontario. Did you know? I was just texting you about this. You knew I had left. We'd left. My family had moved.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I saw it on Facebook that you were in this little movie with your kids singing Neil Young.
Oh, that's right.
In the basement in Edmonton.
That's right. We moved in January. Yeah, that's right. That's relatively recent. How was that performance for you of that song?
Oh, it was beautiful. I thought that your kids had excellent dance moves, and yeah.
Thank you for taking time to watch that silly thing we made. Yeah, that was it was fun. We're all doing our best, and obviously the young. I mean, I think I'm naive in thinking they don't really know what's going on, but on some level they don't know what's going on because we don't know what's going on some level. Like it's unprecedented. So it's weird. Have you been in isolation? Have you been creative per se? Have you been writing or thinking of things to try to, convey in this period?
Okay. So I have been my brain went on the fritz for a little while, but there like our also like internal aspects of my life, like great upheaval that coincided with COVID-19 that feels very personal that I would rather not enter into
Okay.
a discussion. So like, I just feel as if, I was already in a hard place before, and then my and then this happened, so there's like a bit of a pressure cooker. And I don't tend to like, I think when I was like younger, I used to create maybe as like a way of like disconnecting, dissociating.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way in which like you can use a camcorder at a family party in order to mediate your own involvement in it.
Mm-hmm.
And now I actually like the way in which I create art has changed so deeply. And I don't find that it's like a means of disconnecting or self-soothing in the same way. And so like right now I feel like there's something generative that's happening in me, but it's definitely like not an outward process. I do a lot of painting
Oh, okay.
right now, and I write letters to people and to myself, but I don't largely feel like I'm interested in like, well, and I never am this way. Like I'm never like, I'm gonna really like generate a ton. Like here we go. Like I'm gonna just throw it out. I kind of want it to be like a fully thought out thing,
Yeah,
before I put it out.
I appreciate that. First of all, let me say I'm sad and sorry to hear that you were already enduring some form of hardship before we entered into this collective condition of dealing with a pandemic. I hope you're okay. It sounds like you're kind of on the other end of it, or are able to process it more. So without prying, I just wanted to say that. So I hope that you're okay.
It's actually really cool, thank you. But what is weird about this stalling is like you kind of have to be all right with just the fact that there are things that you can't do anything about, which is like often the stuff that we, I think, in general struggle with, right? Like coming to a circumstance that you feel you don't have much control over, and having to accept it. I think, yeah, for me, definitely, like there's something about like the entire world mirroring that experience right now.
Well, yeah. I mean, friends who know me know that I endured a significant period of anxiety, and when I went to see a psychologist about it, I learned that a lot of my anxiety was induced by control issues. Just this notion of trying to control things that were out of my control, like death or life and death. Like there's certain things you can't really control. They're just going to happen. And so I've had some friends check in about how I'm doing. They knowing that they knew that I went through that recently, relatively recently, and I'm actually weirdly okay. Like there's nothing I can do. I know, like, because I've recognized that I can't control it. A lot of things about the way we live and where we're going to end up and all those things. You can't control the future generally, and I've learned that the hard way. And then now this is going on. I'm like, well, I can't. All I can do is do what we've been sort of prescribed to do, be responsible, but otherwise I can't control what's going to happen, and that's sort of helped me. Do you feel like you've had? Is that a part of you? Control issues, or just is that part of how you deal with things?
I don't. I can be like quite ambivalent. Like I will just let things happen, or I'll try to control them. So I don't like have that hard of a time in trying to sit back. But I think that there are things that are like if you're having, say, interpersonal struggles with like people you love, this is like a really hard time to try to deal with them, in the sense that there's like this like beautiful, like magnificent, like reality, which is that like if you love the people that you love them so deeply right now. You're worried, you feel like this concern, and then at the same time, because like people are socially isolated, and like I live alone, people live alone, it can be hard to have conversations and really like know that it can be hard to share information, because you don't know like who's on the other end. You don't know how people are coping. There's no real way to check on them.
Yeah.
So I think like that, in terms of like interpersonal like mental health, is like really hard. And generally, I think we do, you can have like a deep trust in people to control what they can and and seek help when they need it. But at this moment in time, it's actually really hard to know what we need. So it's like, yeah, I find that's more like where my anxiety is coming from, is like just like not getting a great sense of how other people are doing.
Well, there's a strange narrative around that's sort of come up around what we're all going through in terms of a lot of it's been couched in kind of what is really essential work, what is essential labor, truly. And so I feel like that's been both healthy and strange, because we're getting into dialogue about what really matters and what doesn't matter. And as it relates to art and culture, I'm a bit concerned about what it means, because I already felt like a lot of the people that I like to talk to were increasingly marginalized by the material conditions that we all endure now, and the way things are consumed. And now if and when we get to the other end of this situation, I feel like that's in the air. Like, the bright side is like a lot of the rules that we've been conditioned to accept just seemed arbitrary now. Internet limits and I don't know, lots of stuff. Like, you can't work from home. That's outlandish. Well, actually you can. We're learning things about what we've been taught and told to accept. But then the flip side is, does art matter? Like, does stuff matter? Does the stuff that we think is important really matter? Like, now that we're in this life and death situation, like, does any of that make any sense or resonate with you? Just this confusing understanding of what is essential and what isn't?
No, I mean, I think like there are a few things that you're saying, and like one is that like there's the arbitrariness of the value assigned within capitalism to like a range of things has been fully exposed, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was like a PSW for many years. I'm not doing that work now, but as a personal support worker, making $12 to $18 an hour over the course of 10 years, working overnights where I got paid $75 an hour.
Yeah.
Like, that's essential work. I always knew that it was undervalued. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
And like to do that job right now would be especially scary. And like you'd be putting yourself at risk, but also be so concerned for like the people for whom you're working, and who often like have different health and like might be immunocompromised. That stuff is like really like it's brutal that care work isn't like paid for. So like being a musician and working in music and recognizing that, as musicians, we're like so rarely paid.
Yeah.
And we're so rarely paid fairly, and always having to work other jobs, maybe getting like a grant and then having a touring cycle, which would like allow me to like have a prolonged period where I didn't have to work another job. But, generally working other jobs, like I've been working at a restaurant as a dishwasher. It's really clear when you're like working at a restaurant as a dishwasher, like the restaurant I worked at, it, like always paid me really fairly, and people were really like, wow, you make that much, you make $15 and get a tip out as a dishwasher. That's incredible. But it was clear in that ecosystem of that like restaurant, it's called Donna's, amazing restaurant. They believe that the value of my work is as important as like the value of everyone else's work, because if I wasn't doing this job, then no one else would be able to.
Yeah.
And like understanding those contingencies like within that like small workplace was like something that allowed me to feel like a lot of dignity and also respect for my bosses, which is like kind of rare to feel.
Yeah.
But so then like when I'm thinking about art and labor and like how hierarchical that system is, like every time I've like worked as a musician, I've been reminded at like how little I'm valued. And then that's not by people who like consume music or come to shows, right? It's by the people who are organizing the system.
Right.
Like the disparity of the payout for an opener who might get $100 to $250 guarantee in a city like Toronto, opening at like a venue that can house 500 people, and then the headliner who would clean up $3,000 to $5,000 in that night. It's like really, really, really brutal. Like that disparity always just showed that there was this hazing that happened. And it wasn't like hazing like in a frat where like you could like move up as you got older. In fact, it just had to do with like whether or not you were working with the right administrators. So if you have good management, if you have people who are booking you, who are part of like a circle of people who determine like who works at festivals and who doesn't. These things are kind of like cartels, really.
Cartels? Huh.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, because they actually like control like who gets to actually do business.
Right. Interesting.
And so I've been thinking about the music industry as like this like set of cartels for a long time. And like definitely like the demonetization of our work as like recording artists is interesting. Like in a moment like right now where artists are being asked to like do these make work streaming projects. Like Facebook collaborates with like National Arts Center to pay everyone like each person $1,000 for a live stream. Now you think about that and it's like, well, we have these things called records. Like we have recorded music and we all paid a lot of money to make those records. We paid for them to be mastered, to sound beautiful. And they contain on them like beautiful ideas. Some of them are live performances. Some of them are manufactured. You pick what music you like, but those records are there as like, you know, like representations of our sound. Like why now am I supposed to try to like hustle to get it like a proper mic so that you can hear me play like my acoustic guitar? And like the thing you like about Joel Plaskett's music, if you like Joel Plaskett's music, I'm not going to comment, but like I saw a bit of his live stream is like not his acoustic guitar playing, right? Like, so like, is it really that, like, what's the point of this kind of thing? And I can see how in the interim, it's like, we're going to throw you a bit of money. But the reality is that if all of us weren't living week to week or gig to gig, we wouldn't all be really, really afraid for our future in the immediate. And we would like be able to like sit back and think like, okay, so my gigs are canceled. Like, what does this mean? Like, what do I want to change about how the music industry is working?
Well,
you know?
So the flip side of what this line of discussion is that I actually think this has been a potentially galvanizing moment for our appreciation of art and music. I like sports, for example, and I can't think of anything more absurd right now than how many athletes receive millions and millions of dollars every year for playing a sport, and now they can't do anything. Like they can interact with people online, and then some of them are, you know, they're making little stories and videos and whatnot, but they can't actually employ their practice in a way that we can really appreciate remotely. Whereas musicians in particular, it's interesting to me that the subtext for me is, you know what saves our souls a little bit? And I don't mean to quote Jewel. I don't know who I just quoted there, but
yeah, it's Jewel.
Is it Jewel? Music is so significant that all of these corporations are trying to bend over backwards. It's like you mentioned Facebook and Instagram. Lots of people are doing it, right? It is such an accessible art form on some level and so significant that that's almost been the first trend or call in terms of getting what used to be a thing we went to go and see or process as a group of people. It's one of the first things I've seen really pop up as everyone's doing a live stream every day, and it involves music. So I guess what I'm saying is, yes, I think music has been, as you said, demonetized, undervalued. It's telling to me, and almost ironic, that it's been it's been something we've all gone to now in this period of uncertainty and confusion and fear. We need music. Does that make any sense? Like, it just seems so.
Well, okay, like I think that on like the most deepest level, music is something that we all have, right? Mm-hmm. Like you have a song in you know a song, you carry a tune, you make up a tune. And these things like you have whether or not you're getting paid for them. You know, you have, it's an incredible thing that humans have. And so like when we're thinking about like what's essential, I mean, on like this level of not like what's essential in terms of like helps people not get a virus, but like what is something that's essential to us, like in ourselves. I think music is one of those things. And one of the things that I always feel is so strange about the quote unquote music industry is how it removes music from like regular people, right? Like once you have a mass culture, then everyone wants to see like whoever, like Billie Eilish or like I don't know, like do what they're doing. There's like this one way in which it's like that has a lot more to do with spectacle than it does with music. But actually, like a really beautiful live stream that I saw was like a kitchen party that was like one woman in Cape Breton playing the spoons.
Oh.
And this is like this reminder that like people bring, have music in their lives and like use it all the time. Regardless of like whether or not it's paid for, like that's the value of music. Music as work is like a different thing, and I'm interested in like a kind of angle on that, which is that what would happen if we like drastically reorganized the economy at this moment in time, like rather than looking at like sectoral adjustments, but we were like, okay, universal basic services and universal basic income, everyone's going to get $2,000 to $5,000 a month, whatever you need. And there could still be arts grants, or like you could still work to be able to like record music or pay for certain things you might, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but like people who loved making music would still make music. Right?
It seems that that's happening even now, I guess. Like, I guess to potentially, I didn't even make this argument earlier, but I will contravene maybe where I was leading us earlier by suggesting that perhaps at the end of all this, certain things like music won't be deemed as essential as we thought they were. Let me flip it now. Let me flip it and say, and everyone kind of reflexing to music as a balm, maybe it's heightening the importance of music in a weird way.
But it's heightening the importance of music while maybe making us question how we understand, like, showing the value of things. Yeah. Which is to say, like, I think that is happening all around, right? Which is, like, capitalism hasn't been, like, helping so many people out, right? If capitalism is based on the exploitation of the many for the profit of the few. And when you see, like, that within our like, different siloed industries, like, everyone can name who owns Loblaws, right? The Westons, right? Spotify. What is Spotify?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know who owns it. Yeah. I can't remember the name. They come up every once in a while. They talk about it. I don't know. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
I guess I'm just saying, like, there's a point where you have to think, like, maybe it would be the best thing for music if the industries around it, shifted and collapsed more. Like, because like, as it is, the way in which the hierarchy works tends to reward the people who are paying out the most to the larger administrators and the people who run the cartels. So, like, that's what I'm suggesting in this moment, like, that we understand how much we value music, that people have a restored understanding of, like, how important music is in their own daily practices and in their own daily lives. Yeah. And, those of us who, like, spend our lives working only at music, like, or trying to, like, reserve as much time for music, like, it would be great if we were just supported and we didn't have to worry. But I don't think, like, the way things have been organized lately, which is, like, to try to make yourself, like, an export ready phenomenon, right? Like, a lot of the funding through the business music business grants is around, like, export ready stuff. So, like, you want to try to make art that isn't necessarily like for your local audience, right? And it's for, like, an American dominated mass media to, like, pick up, right? And, like, it's supposed to proliferate around the world in a particular way. You're supposed to make like digital content, which is really like feeding digital outlets. Like,
yeah, I just got asked to be on a jury for this music fund, and I'll be frank, I'm a bit confused by some of the criteria, because if you don't have more than 500 followers on each of the prominent social media platforms, I'm meant to disqualify the applicant. And I'm like, what? Like, first of all, I don't know if this will disqualify me from being on the thing, because I haven't expressed this to them. But I mean, that's gross. Like, if you don't have, I don't know, that has nothing to do with, I'm not even being asked to judge the artistic merit. I'm just supposed to verify that the thing is real, that the entity that's applying is real, and that they have, that other people have become convinced to follow them. And I find that really odd, and that's been an aspect of you are completely right. Our granting agencies seem, for the most part, I don't want to say this with a broad brush, because I think a couple of them don't do this as much, but there are a few that really want to reward people for being viable. And all viable means is people outside of Canada are going to be interested in what you're doing.
But I think like the arts councils are a lot different. Like Canada Council for the Arts is not that way.
That's right.
And I really always appreciate that. So I don't want to like just use this big brush. But
I think the Ontario Arts Council, I would argue, is also similar. I've sat on some of those juries, and it doesn't feel that way. Yeah.
I think like most of the arts councils there's a big difference between music business, right?
Yeah.
And arts funding. So music business development, which is like factor, right? And that's where a lot of the money comes from for artists. So when you see that, the thing is that we don't all operate in these distinct markets. Like we all operate in the same market. So while I might be like able to get, I'll be totally transparent. I am not in a place of precarity at this moment because I applied to write a weird research-based project around like the mine that my grandfather came to work in when he immigrated to Canada. I got a chunk of money for that, and so in this moment I got it from the Canada Council for the Arts. I'm so grateful because I don't have to worry. But I can't get even factored to fund a lot of like anything, and there are people who have the reverse situation. The funny part is that we're often all playing the same venues, right? It's really interesting, but that's like a question about like what is music and what's it for and who's using it for what. And who's got an amazing live stream everyone should check out is Jonathan Adjemian.
Oh, nice.
Who's like a piano player, and he plays, I don't think anyone's paying him at all. He plays most days early at 9 a.m. and it's Eastern Standard Time, and it's really beautiful. And I don't know, like
it's weird. It's so weird having a muse, isn't it? Like people are like, why do you do the things? What people like will probably ask Jonathan. Like you're saying it in awe of him, but I feel like there's a slight questioning when you say he's not getting paid. He's just doing it. I do this thing that I do, and I don't get a lot of remuneration for it. You do what you do, and there's not, you mentioned having to work other jobs to support yourself and essentially your muse. Like it's weird. Anyway, this is a bigger psychological question, and I end up having these kinds of conversations about motivations
But people who only do things for money like run the world, and that's actually just the scary part.
But I guess what I'm potentially saying is that we've painted ourselves in a corner by providing, like, okay, so this show that you're on will go to Apple, it'll go to Google, it'll go to Stitcher, it'll go to all of the things, YouTube, and I'm just giving them content. And they don't give me anything in return except for exposing more people to the content. Like they're the distribution channels. And that's the way it is for musicians as well nowadays. Yeah. Like you just give all of these companies your stuff. And ideally it's just this weird quid pro quo we've all come to agree to do. And that's why people external to our circumstances are like, well, you're going to do it anyway. Why would I give you money? And so, or why would you expect anyone to pay for it? You're doing it anyway. So Jonathan
Do you think that people actually have that attitude? Like, I mean, I think passively people have that attitude, but when I really tell people how like Spotify works, they're like, "What?" Like, I get DMs that are like, "What's the best way for you to actually get paid for your music?" And then I can tell them, Bandcamp's the way that for a digital album, you should buy it on there.
Right. But the masses aren't. I guess what I'm saying is, in the widespread agreement to use these platforms that I've outlined, that is implicit. The implicit sort of gesture there is that all of the content that people make, movies, TV shows, Netflix, like everyone, it's just, I shouldn't have to pay more than the bare minimum to access everything for free, almost for free. Like the same experience we have on Netflix where we can just randomly flip through and watch a movie. Like you used to have to go, first of all, to the theater and spend a lot of money for each thing, and now you're getting everything for a fraction of it if you're paying for that kind of stuff. And if not, for music, it's not even like, I mean, I think there are tiers of, I mean, I pay for a digital streaming thing because I have a family and it was just convenient. But it sucks. I try to defend this by saying, well, I buy records and I go to shows and I feel like I'm contributing to the culture. So at the very least, if my kid wants to hear some song, he can access it now using this platform. So I don't think the masses think about this stuff too much. It's just gradually we've come to be conditioned to think that art isn't worth paying for. And so while it's noble of some of us to just say, yeah, I'm doing a live stream on my thing because I need to do it, I'm just saying, and I'm not blaming us, like I'm doing it, like I'm doing it right now. I'm complicit in this. But there is, if I step back and look at what we're doing, it is problematic. Like we have painted ourselves in this corner where it's accepted. And
see, I think of like live streaming as busking. Like I think it's like the equivalent to busking.
Sure.
Whereas I think that like producing entire records is like, the thing you're talking about.
So that's what I'm saying though, but the general public will not see, they'll see those as equivalent. They won't see the distinction you're making. If you're going to play a show and you're in a club, I don't know if the general public would be like, is that a step up from busking? Is it not? Is it the same? Is busking considered lower class kind of activity? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's very confusing. And I don't know. I don't know if we're not going to...
So, like, I guess I was just thinking more of, like, the risk, right? Like, the risk of busking. Like, you don't know how much you're going to make in a day. You go do it.
Yeah.
You don't know who your audience is going to be. There's this, like, amount of, like, there's a way in which is spontaneous and unsheltered. Whereas, like, a gig, you know what your guarantee is. The hilarious part is that, like right now, those 1,000, like my friend Nick was making this point yesterday. Nick, who plays in the Atlantic School of Spontaneous Composition, Nick Dorado, who just actually, I'm just going to say this, put out a beautiful piano recording that anyone could buy on Bandcamp. But like,
under Nick's name or Booty Band or
Booty?
Okay.
Booty, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Anyways, you can link through like Instagram, I guess, BB Booty or something.
Right.
But the point is that they were talking about like how like those live streams, like that $1,000 guarantee for a live stream is more than like many of us are used to getting for a live show, right?
Right, because
we don't get that guarantee. Like we still tour on door deals often.
Yeah. Well, so all of these platforms couldn't really, truly capitalize on the live show experience except when agents, club owners, bands paid them to promote the thing. Yeah. So now, in this period, they're like, what the hell are we going to do here to leverage content for our platforms? Well, we might actually have to put up some money and pay these people to do this finally. So it is a weird, I don't mean to use the term reparations, but I mean, it's weird. It's all of a sudden, that's, on one hand, that's good that you're getting paid to do a live stream. But on another, it's Well, I don't know.
I mean, I think the interesting thing is that like we're talking about the intersection of like people who make money off of content and people who make content, right? And we're talking about it as content because that's like how they talk about it, right?
Well, it's
like,
also, but I guess I'm also talking about how people consume that content, and
Yeah.
the reason that content exists is because there's an appetite for it, and so that appetite has been. I interviewed Dave Ulrich. Who started that? There used to be a Canadian. It was one of the first digital music providers. It was called Zunior, and he started it. I don't know, 16 years ago. I don't think it really functions the way it once did. And he made this point of saying we're going to have to get used to the fact that like these companies that are fighting things like Napster and whatever else, like you can't compete with free. He said that. He just said you can't compete with free, and it always has stuck with me because. He was offering, digital music. It was one of the first digital music stores that paid artists, and so you would pay a very little amount you'd pay like $8 for a record or something, which was relatively okay at the time. Mm-hmm. And so this whole notion of you can't compete with free has really stuck with me because that's what we're all doing now. They're all trying to modify their behavior to compete with free. And I think the consumers are like, why do I have to pay for anything? I'm so used to not paying for things. Mm-hmm. Anyway, this was a longer spiel about this stuff than I expected, but that's at the same time, I've learned things from you. Was this useful in any way?
I would love like a more organized conversation about this with like everybody.
Yeah.
In the sense that I think it's actually like the issue, right? For anyone who's working in media, it's like been the issue for a long time.
Yeah.
And a gig worker is a gig worker.
Well, this has been an equalizer. Like everything is like, for example, I write for Exclaim magazine. For the first time in its history, they did not publish a print issue for April 2020. That's significant. And I know that's for all musicians on some level, that's in Canada, that is a significant cog in the wheel. And if it's one of the last standing music publications in the country. In fact, it is the only one, really. Weeklies are all gone. Everything's gone. So anyway, okay. If you want to have that talk and you want me involved, just let me know. I will participate in that. I appreciate your insights on these issues. We are meant to be talking about Fiverr and the Atlantic School of Spontaneous Composition. And the new release is You Wanted Country Volume 1. It's wonderful. I want to talk about it a little bit with you. Let's begin with the group. Because I've known you as Fiverr for a long time now. What is Fiverr and the Atlantic School of Spontaneous Composition exactly?
It's just like me, and then the Atlantic School of Spontaneous Composition is Jeremy Costello, who has a project called Special Costello.
Wondrous project. Man. That is one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
And Nick Dorado, who has an amazing project called Booty, also like just an instrumentalist who enlivens any project that he's in.
Nick, just so you know, Nick has been on this show when he was or is he still in a band called Century Egg?
I don't know if Century Egg is still active, although I think they might have a recording in the can, but Nick's in aquaculture with Jeremy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And then there's Bianca Palmer, who's an incredible drummer. Mm-hmm. And all three of them play with Beverly Glenn Copeland as well. Mm-hmm. So Bianca and Nick are part of like the CMW, the Creative Music Workshop out on the East Coast, and have like been studying improvised music for a really long time. Yeah. Jeremy's really into prog and is like a great improviser as well. And so
by Prague, by the way, you mean progressive music, not the city of Prague in the Czech Republic. Okay, just making sure. Yeah.
And so like they all play together. And I saw them play with a Big Booty Band that was backing aquaculture at Sappy Fest of 2017. Mm-hmm. And I thought I'd love to play with those three. And so Nick and I, Nick had like written me an email maybe 5 years prior that I forgot about. I didn't really know that the email was from Nick. And then I saw them like I saw them like play at the art gallery while I was doing sound there for this weird performance art thing called Dort, and then like wrote them a fan mail, and then they like wrote back to me being like, check your email, like I've already written to you, like you don't need to introduce yourself. And then we were like, wow, we're mutual fans. And so they were like, yeah, if you ever want to play together, like let's play together. So we made it happen, and we've been playing together since 2018. We have a full length recording, but we decided we'd put this out first just as a bit of an introduction, because as you said, a lot of people don't know the Atlantic School of Spontaneous Composition, although I did make up the name for them. So
right. Yeah. So some of this background is available for people on YouTube in the Top of a Song documentary series that I hope we can talk about at some point, which is very entertaining. But thank you for that sort of background. So the release is You Wanted Country Volume 1. As far as I can tell, it has one original song. Well, I guess does it technically have two original songs? There's a song you do with a bonus track with the Highest Order, your band, your other band, backing you up. That's also an original, right?
Yeah.
Show Me the Mark is the name of that song. Okay.
Yeah.
But the kind of spine of I consider the spine of this EP a song called "It Is What It Is." Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean that's the original that I had written, and then we arranged, and we made a radio edit and a regular life edit, and the regular life edit maybe showcases our improvisational tendencies at the end in a pretty drawn out way.
Yeah, no, it is great, and so the other songs are "Train Leaves Here This Morning," which was originally written by Gene Clark. It Won't Be Long and I'll Be Hating You, which was originally written by Johnny Paycheck, and then Why Do I Have to Choose, which is a Willie Nelson song, and then, like I said, the song with the Highest Order. So it is one or two originals, and then kind of a tribute, and it's called You Wanted Country, ? Inflection goes up at the end. What does this mean as a whole, then? What is this release to you exactly?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you that the reason why Show Me the Mark was on there is because we were supposed to. I made that recording. I hired the Highest Order to play with me on it. It was for a movie soundtrack called Circle of Steel, and Circle of Steel was like going to do a big Toronto premiere. So I just like had thrown it on the recording. Also because it was supposed to make us eligible for funding, which then we were actually rejected for. So
okay,
don't have to get into that. But the point is that it was just like a way of getting it up there. I really think of like the piece to be like the three covers and It Is What It Is.
Okay.
And It Is What It Is. Like, you know, if you got like a physical copy of it, that's what would be on it, just so you know.
Okay, right. Oh, the bonus track is not on it. On the physical version?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
But I mean, we haven't made the physical version yet, just to avoid confusion, but it won't. Yeah, the bonus track won't be on it.
Okay. Okay.
But so the point is, that's what it is.
That's what it is. Okay. I want to ask you a little bit about each of the songs if we have the time to do that. And so I want to begin with It Is What It Is, which has, I think, one of the funniest opening lines. And forgive me if me finding it funny is wrong in any way, but raindrops on my window look like raindrops is the opening line, and it makes me smile or laugh every time I hear it. Is that to you is that meant to be a funny line?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Simone, I think you're very funny. I think we've gone through our history before. I've known you. When did we meet? Like 2003 or something like that?
Yeah.
In Guelph. So we talked about this on the last time maybe you were on. But anyway, I've always thought you were very funny, but your music is I think viewed seriously, but I know you're very funny. So raindrops on my window look like raindrops, and the delivery is so deadpan. It's like a Bill Callahan type joke where you're like, was that a joke? What was that? That seemed like sincere at the same time, but you would agree it's something of a comical line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What inspired that particular line?
Oh, I mean, I think it's part of the larger flow of the song, which is just like the statement obvious statements that like also at different times can be imbued with like such deep meaning via metaphor, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, sort of conversely, there's another very striking line, or couplet, I suppose, on this song. There's a verse that ends with, "And it seemed to me that nobody is free, but the few allowed to choose had better pick a good cage." That's fantastic. That's another one where I'm like, holy Lord, that's a good line. Can you talk about maybe what the significance of that one might be?
Well, I think that's kind of the line that culminates the song. And I was thinking a lot about how there's this metaphor that's often used about like chains or like being in prison, right? And, like people feeling enslaved or people feeling like they are imprisoned when in fact they're not, right? Like there are all different kinds of freedom, but like if you're not incarcerated, you're not incarcerated. If you're not enslaved, you're not enslaved. And should we still be using these realities as metaphors? I don't really think we should. And so I was thinking about like the culture that I'm from, which is like, white settler culture in Canada, and people really feeling like nihilistic, often saying like there are no choices that we can make within capitalism that are ethical, so who cares?
Yeah.
Using really acute political analysis to prove once and once again that there's nothing that we can do. I see that as like a real current in the culture that I'm in, and it was something that really, really always bothered me. And so I kind of wanted to just like get at that attitude in a way, which is like, part of the general idea of the song is that it is what it is, which is a platitude that's thrown out by people who just want to say like, accept your lot.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Let's not get too deep into it. And it's not, right? And it isn't. And trying to really like just throw over these attitudes and be like, there's a way to accept things while also trying to resist them.
Does this feel particularly prescient or contemporary, given the kind of self-isolation that we're going through and the kind of privileged whining I've been seeing about it? Because people are like, I can't do anything. Well, yeah, you can. You can do a lot more than a lot of people still. That's how I've kind of been viewing things. Yeah.
I mean, I think that I don't want to be too hard on people, because I think that there are a range of things that are happening internally that like people are faced with a pressure cooker. So
absolutely, this is very stressful for everyone. I'm not trying to downplay that. I'm just saying.
But Vish, I'm with you, because I think that like people are acting like this is prison, and this is not prison. Prison is a place where you can contract COVID-19.
Yes.
Like within a day if someone else has it, and there is, you're choosing segregation if you're choosing self-isolation. There's not good food. You don't have access to your own toilet. Like there are people on prison strike right now, and I would feel like silly if I didn't bring up the fact that in Laval right now there are people on prison strike, and they're asking for the release of people from jail, and all across like this continent there are people asking for the release of prisoners from jail. And so like, I mean, I think also it's like this time where like many of the freedoms that we're used to have been removed, but that it's really important then to consider like, with the absence of freedom, those of us who get to choose where we live, who we stay with, these things, like, we have to choose well. We have to choose with our hearts, and we have to try to be, considerate.
Yeah. Well, that's well said, and I appreciate that. Okay, I want to move on to the next song on the EP. It's Train Leaves Here This Morning. As I mentioned, or maybe I didn't specify, this is a Gene Clark song, right?
Yeah.
And what was it about this song that struck you as... I mean, you love Gene Clark. I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I just always love that tune. Part of the process of making this record was showing Nick, Jeremy, and Bianca the tradition that I love so much, because, like, they would show me like Herbie Hancock or Stevie Wonder, music I hadn't like paid all that much attention to in my life. Duke Ellington, like
Yeah.
I learned so much about music through working with them. And then I'm coming from a tradition that I like deeply know. I could pull out any of the song, a Gene Clark song and just sing it. It's so in me. And I just played it for them and they really enjoyed that one.
Okay.
I always like it because it's just like a great hook of just like this idea of like there's a train leaves here this morning, I don't know what I might be on, is like
Is that a double entendre?
I think so.
I think so.
And then it's like it's also just like got that oblique way of Gene Clark telling a story where the action's a little withheld and it's more observational, and
Yeah.
I've always loved that about his writing. But the melody, of course, is so beautiful.
It's a beautiful melody, and it's really haunting, this performance of it. You all did a really wonderful job.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, then
I really like Bianca's playing on it. It's pretty amazing brushwork, I think.
I believe Bianca is kind of downplays her opening fill. Is that fair to say?
Her Phil, she's just like got this amazing lyricism to her playing.
Yes.
I find, and so it's like you can hear it. She's always acting out the character in the song and acting out the lyrics with her drumming, and that comes across quite clearly with that opening fill for sure.
Yeah.
And the solo.
Wonderful spirit to Bianca. Generally, anytime I've interacted with Bianca, I'm like, this person seems kind of like a character, and I I like it. I like it a lot. And you tend to be drawn to fellow characters, I would say. When I think of some of your collab, like Simone TB is someone you've worked with a lot, kind of a character in her own way. Just like, yeah, I will always remember Simone TB. In the masses of humanity, some of the people you work with, like Simone TB, Bianca, they stand out. That's all I'll say. They seem like interesting people.
Incredible people.
Incredible people. So the next song, I alluded to something about Bianca there that I learned in this wonderful new documentary series that is on the YouTube there, on the Fiverr, the Fiverr YouTube. The series is called Atop of a Song. And I believe the train leaves here this morning, and also the next song, It Won't Be Long, and I'll Be Hating You, are profiled in Atop of a Song. So I want to get into Atop of a Song in a moment, but first of all, It Won't Be Long and I'll Be Hating You is a Johnny Paycheck song. In this case, I've never heard this before in a Fiverr record to my memory. I mean, other people have sung with you. Lead vocal, Jeremy Costello, right?
Yeah.
Now, what brought that? That seemed, I was like, whoa, that is really out of left field. Why was that decision made, first of all?
Jeremy is one of the most amazing singers in the entire world. And why would you ever get him into a studio and not make him sing lead?
Right. Well, except that it's a Fiverr record. That's all. I appreciate what you're saying. I've witnessed Jeremy. I've heard Jeremy's voice. I've thought the same things as you. I've seen Jeremy and Nick perform together as Special Costello, and I was just like, why isn't everyone talking about this? I've thought that before. I'll say that right now. But my point here is, this is a Fiverr record. Does this mark a sea change in how Fiverr operates? That you might have guest vocalists, so to speak.
Well,
I mean,
Max Heineman sang a song on the last record.
the Audible. Did he? Oh, yes,
yeah.
that's correct. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. Okay.
I write songs for people, so it's cool when other people sing them. In this instance of doing this like workaround covers, it just like was a tune that Jeremy picked and that we all loved playing so much, and it's a collaborative project. The other thing that's weird, for so long I've been playing guitar and no one ever asked me about that, and I play all the guitar on this record, so I'm playing the guitar during that song.
What do you mean no one's asked you about your guitar playing?
Yeah, in my life no one asked me about my guitar playing, and it's fine because I often play rhythm guitar, but I also do rip leads. And I think that it's a gendered expectation, like being a feminized person, like people aren't like they don't really think about your playing or your voicing, and in general I think like people don't think about instrumentalists voicing all that much, but I do have my own style of playing, and so I'm playing the guitar on there, and I'm singing harmony.
Okay,
And
hang on a second.
so it's just like a collaborative
All right.
situation, That's like what I'm inviting with Fiverr. It's a collaboration, and like it's not about me being a star. It's about me like being able to like galvanize people and instrumentalists of all forms, including vocalists, to be able to make the best thing we can make. And so for this song, the best thing we could do was get Jeremy to sing lead.
Let me posit two things about what you're saying about your guitar playing. I'll put two things forward to you. You tell me what you think. Number one, first of all, I have been playing more guitar every day recently, and I've had a guitar in my life since I was 16, but just never really took to it because I ended up playing drums, and that had to be, everyone was playing guitar, so I stuck to drums. Every once in a while I've played guitar in public, but I'm trying to learn it and figure it out. It's a puzzle. And every time I learn a new song or learn something new about the guitar, I'm just high for a day. I'm just like, wow.
Awesome.
I'd never have known this. So I think, and I kind of think you've been playing guitar in the same way as a student of it, with people around you that are considered the hot shots, and you're using it the way lots of people use it. And now you're getting better and better and better. And it's happening in public a little bit. And so people kind of maybe are taking that for granted. That's my perspective on maybe you. The second thing is, I don't think people are impressed by guitar anymore as an instrument. Like, I'm excited about it because I just have had it. I've had them sitting around my house, and now I'm finally feeling like I have the time, and it's sort of therapeutic to kind of pick it up and learn stuff about it. Is it conceivable that you and I, people like us, think the guitar is more important than it is to some other people?
I think that you've got a point. I don't think it's just the guitar, though.
I see. You think people think of you as a singer and a songwriter, and they don't?
No. It's
Okay.
not about me. No, that point was just like a little like cherry bomb, as my friends would say.
Okay.
But for the real thing is that I don't think people think about the voicing of instrumentalists, and that's like a lot of what I'm getting at with the Atlantic School of Spontaneous Composition.
Okay.
Is that if you get familiar with like Nick's playing as a piano player or as a saxophone player, or as a lap steel player now, you can hear Nick throughout all of those instruments as themselves. You can hear Jeremy's voicing as a bass player in this incredible way. And the same with Bianca. Like it would be foolish not to be able to recognize how oblique some of her playing is.
Yeah.
And that's like a thing that I think a lot of people who listen to jazz understand. Like, is that you can pick out the different voices of different saxophone players, for instance. Quite obvious.
I think
listen enough.
Absolutely. I think hardcore music fans relate to what you're saying. Like I can. I've been on a real kick with the Jesus Lizard lately, a band that was significant to me when I was younger. And each of the players and the vocalists in that band are distinct and unique and have, to me, kind of reinvented those instruments. But a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think that because it's just not something they've thought that much about. So I guess what I'm saying is...
But also, Vish, less and less are people playing their instruments.
Right.
Like a lot of the pop music that you're listening to are sampled sounds.
Yeah.
And so that voicing in terms of instrumentalists, maybe people could recognize production. You can hear when Pharrell makes something.
Yeah.
But it's not actually like the playing that people recognize. And so that as like a form of literacy exists less and less.
But it's both, you're talking about imagination in every instance. Like we're basically saying some of us can recognize other people's imagination, specifically idiosyncratic imagination, in their approach to whatever they're making, maybe more than others recognize. And that maybe that's what you're saying. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think maybe, is that what you're saying? Let me phrase it this way. Is that what you're saying, Simone?
No, I'm just, I mean, imagination as voicing, I suppose.
It is,
right?
Yeah. We all have these pianos, and like they're thousands of years old. Some of these instruments have been around forever, and then every new person who plays it, they may not realize it, but that's their personality. Like the same You can get on Ray Charles's piano if you have access to it, and you're going to play piano in a way that he never played it in. It's his piano, but you're Nick Dorado, so you're going to play it the way Nick Dorado plays it, and then it becomes kind of your piano. It becomes Nick's piano. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I feel like we're on the same page, and just we flipped around the book a little bit. That's all that happened there. Now, I have been alluding to this many times. A top of a song is a new favorite thing of mine on the internet. What is a top of a song?
Top of the song is like within the tradition of like VH1 specials, like Behind the Music. It's like a deep dive into a range of facts about the songs that we covered. And, it's a little production that was made. It's in 3 parts. It had a purpose of trying to focus in a bit on both the useless information that interviewers kind of ask musicians about our practices and our records, and also try to give information about songwriters and about songs, and focus in on the song, because to me, country music is so much a tradition of songs, and I wanted to talk about writers, because I think that writers get short shrift often, and there's more and less information about writers depending on who they are. But I did just want to kind of focus in on like why we made the choices we made and their resonance.
Well, okay, that is a very sincere answer about what a top of a song is. What about the kind of production aesthetic of this series? You mentioned VH1. It almost seems like a satire of those kinds of things, but it has this sincere and factual element. Can you talk a little bit about the approach to the look of these things, the sound of these things, the voiceovers? Where did all that come from?
Well, as you said, there's a lot of sincerity in it. So I think I wanted to make like a vehicle for sincere information about the work, but I didn't want it to be boring. So I made something that I thought was funny within like the tradition of like music media, because music media is particular and it is more or less entertaining. I came up with the idea, and Jeremy's actually doing the voiceover, but his voice is modified. Yeah. And there's that hilarious thing with like Behind the Music where it's like they're kind of not talking about anything, and like the whole time you're just like looking at David Crosby talk about like not the part that you care about, right? Like never. It's just like they got these interviews, they smashed them together, they edit it like really fast paced so that you feel like you're getting somewhere, and then after like half an hour you haven't like learned anything. Like I watched the one about Mamas and the Papas, and it was like so unfair to Mama Cass. Like it was just brutal. Like, for someone who couldn't speak for herself anymore on account of not being alive. The way she was spoken about was just like terrible. But so I don't know, like the esteem of those programs is like pretty dubious to me, but I thought that it like I would try to make like my best ripoff, that I could, and just like have fun in the editing suite. And Colin Medley like helped clean up a lot of it and ran it to VHS, which was like really sweet. And shot the interviews. But yeah, it was like really on my end, I have to say it's a love letter to my band, because I just like love them all so much, and I wanted people to know how beautifully they play and how thoughtful they are, and I wanted to give a bit of a sense of their personalities, because I think that you can really also hear it in the playing, and it would be nice for people to experience that resonance.
Well, no, as I say, I find it deeply compelling and entertaining. One of your big gets in this series is the music critic Roger Freck. How exactly did you land Roger?
You just try to get the big names, and when you can, you do.
I mean, I was surprised because he kind of keeps to himself. So I was really amazed. But I encourage everyone to go on youtube.com and look for a top of a song. Go to the Fiverr page and find it, because you'll learn a lot, and very, very fascinating. Okay, and I guess in a sense, because we've already talked about the versions of It Is What It Is, the final song I want to ask you about is a Willie Nelson song called Why Do I Have to Choose? Well, what do you want to say about that?
Well, that's like a song that I always thought the production of was like really particular. Like it's that 80s Willie Nelson production that's got some, I don't know, synth going on that feels a little underexplored in a way. But I love the tune.
This is from, sorry to interject, this is from Willie Nelson's 1983 album Take It to the Limit, right?
Yeah.
Right. So the 80s were weird. The 80s were weird to almost everyone from the 60s and 70s. I don't know what was going on there.
And the truth is like around the production stuff, it's compelling because you've got like this classic songwriter like Willie Nelson who can always take like the simplest idiom and like extend it to like the depth of its truth, you know? Mm-hmm. And like I think of like Willie Nelson as so deeply loving, you know, the
Absolutely.
characters
yeah.
that he's singing from. And so there's something about like this classic trope of like the cheating song, which tends to be like about the sneakiness or the duplicity of cheating. And that's like what's in country. And like, in fact, like it investigates the shame of loving more than one person at the same time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, you know, like I don't think those songs often serve people who aren't cheating, you know, like when, you know, but they can make people who aren't cheating feel like they're cheating. And what is it to like love more than one person at the same time, or to, you know, feel like love for more than one person at the same time? I've always thought like that song like investigates this like line where like, why do I have to choose? See everybody lose, walk around and sing the blues, darling, I refuse. It's like this radical honesty about that is actually quite a beautiful thing to love two people at once, and that it doesn't necessarily have to be like condemned. And I just like love that about that tune. So I wanted to cover it, and I wanted to sing it as a duet with Jeremy because it seemed like really possible for us to do. We learned it together in a trailer at Scotch Village, where Jeremy lives part of the year out in Nova Scotia. And I think that day we were supposed to work as a band to arrange the tune, but then like Nick had gone in this hot tub the night before in Fredericton of that was like full of gray water. Like I watched them walk into a hot tub that was full of water that was gray and sit in it for like 5 minutes. And I was like, is that hot tub even hot? And they were like, nope. And I was like, well, get out of it. And then like the next day we got to go to where we were working, and they were so sick. So then me and Jared just like learned this as a duet and like put the work in on our vocals, and it's so simple for us to sing together. So I was really pleased to be able to share that, you know.
Well, it's lovely. I mean, the whole thing's great. I appreciate it very much. Is there anything more you want to say about You Wanted Country Volume 1? I was going to ask you what the future holds for the series, but is there anything else you want to touch upon before we move on?
No, I really... it's just an EP, right? It's a simple introduction to these players, and so I don't think of it as like stacking up in the same way that like one might evaluate a full length. I just wanted to put together some nice songs for people, and I think we'll be doing different volumes at different times because exploring the tradition is something we all want to do together. When
you went in to make it, I think you already said this, you had made a record length version, or sorry, you made a record of original songs, or did you make a record length version of this series that you said a few things, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping all around.
No.
You said, go ahead.
We made like a full length record of all originals that isn't out yet.
Okay.
And I think that it's rooted in my own sensibilities around country songwriting, but then also ourselves as like a unit of like improvisational players.
Right.
And so I thought like also to introduce this unit through this very conservative kind of approach to song. Will allow people to maybe understand and read more into it. It will give like a sonic context to a very different thing that we end up doing on the full length, which should be out within the year.
Okay. I wonder, I'm just speculating here, and you don't have to speak to this if you don't want to, but you said that you hadn't yet created physical copies of this EP. Does it stand to reason that when the rest of the volumes are released, then maybe then you'll put out like a full-length version of them? Is that...
Yeah, like volume 1 will be side A, volume 2 will be side B.
Right, okay.
Just like around like the earth and the earth being like not needing too much new material, it just seemed like
sure, yeah,
frivolous to put it out on vinyl at the moment.
So is volume 2 done?
Pretty much not recorded, but it's done in terms of other things. Yeah, I'm going to keep that.
Okay, all right, it's fine. No, I just I don't mean to ask nosy questions, but it's as someone who's curious, that's all. I'm just asking.
Yeah, I mean, like there were some designs that can't really be accomplished in this moment, given social distancing. So it's a little bit of a bummer.
Okay, so so the next Fiverr and the Atlantic School of Spontaneous Composition record will be out likely within the year, unless the year doesn't let you do that for various reasons.
It's so hard to know. Like, I'd love to just like put it up now. At this point, I'm like, hey, this music, but it's hard to understand what the future is. I mean, in this way, I can't imagine everything returning to how it was before. Yeah. And so, like, the reasons why we had timed things had to do with the strategies around, like, making the most tourable act, right? Like, for us, we wanted to be able to tour in a way that was, like, ethical and good for the planet. We wanted to, like, try to establish ourselves and be able to get shows and workshops and do different things all around. And now it feels like everyone's reevaluating how things are working. I've seen a few artists just be like, we're rebooking our June tour for September. Yeah. This seems like very wishful thinking. I understand like denial as a stage of grief, but I also am like, I think there's a full economic collapse, right?
I think some people are saying things, expecting things to go back to normal, and they need to assuage insurance companies and whoever else might be like, hey, you canceled your tour. You got to reschedule. Like, I mean, it's weird. And festivals, some festivals haven't yet announced as we're speaking anyway, some music festivals in the summer have not. They're just like, we'll see what happens. But I think they actually fully know they're not going this year. Yeah,
it's hard because like, I understand like a kind of optimism or trying to project like that it could be normal, but I think what it's not really contending with is really not the just the virus, but the fact that so many of the venues that we know probably won't be able to stay open, right? And also like, will people have the money to pay to go to shows? Right. If so I don't really know. And then it's like, well, how's the recording gonna be? And what are our collective ambitions? Like, as things change in our lives, like, what do we want to see happen? And how do we want to work? So I think those things will determine when the record gets put out. And then, of course, its physical copy is also contingent on, like, those pressing plants being open, right? So who knows?
I was being a little facetious, but yes, the future is really, really uncertain, and I think that's an understatement on some level. So... But I appreciate that you have plans and are working and are, that's having plans in this landscape is a form of optimism. So I know it's a big word, and maybe I don't mean to ascribe something to you that doesn't exist, but I would say making plans is all you can do to try to look forward.
I feel really like, as a person who plays music, that I'm always doing it with an optimism. Yeah. I can't see it as like an act that isn't optimistic. So, in that sense, that's that. But like, the other thing is that I'm also ready for everything to change. Yeah. And like, I think what I would love to see is like, and I might actually be like, I'm working on like doing a little survey for people. There's like a little loose collective that I work with called Pitch Shift, and Nick and I were organizing like this IRL like music and labor summit for this summer. That won't happen anymore. But trying to like get people in this moment when our brains are spinning frantically to like try to like do a survey around visioning like how things could work differently.
Yeah.
Like how, because the old normal wasn't like working for a lot of people, as we spent like the first half of this conversation dissecting.
Yeah.
And so then like how do we want the new normal to look? And just I think that's the most hopeful act we can do right now, is like put ourselves towards like some idea of what would be the ideal, and then like try to work to build toward that.
Okay. Well, we look forward to that. Is there, where would you send people to learn more about Fiverr, I guess is the short way of asking. Where can we get people to learn more about buying your stuff and learning more about your stuff?
www.fiverr.com.
3 Fivers.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's got everything. And then they can follow you on socials and all that stuff too.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, cool. Simone, if we can go out on a song from this EP, which one would you pick? Maybe there's only really one option. I don't know. What would you pick?
I don't know, man. You pick it.
Well, I don't want to pick it. You should pick it. It's insightful when the guest picks the song, I think. It's like they're answering a question. I mean, you are answering a question because I asked you to do it. Well, maybe go ahead.
Yeah,
you say it. What were you going to say?
Oh, man. Come on. Don't do this to me.
I want to... No, let's go with It Is What It Is. What do you think?
Do it.
I think we should. Okay, let's go with the radio edit?
Regular life edit.
Regular life edit. Okay, so this is a different take. Okay, this is It Is What It Is, regular life edit by Fiverr and the Atlantic School of Spontaneous Composition from their new release, You Wanted Country Volume 1. Simone, thank you so much for being on the show, and I wish you the best luck with everything going forward.
Thanks, Vish. You too.
Raindrops on the window look like raindrops. The stairs are just a ways down low. She is just a woman in the movies. It is what it is, and that's all. Say
Oh, very special thanks to Simone Schmidt for being on this, the 542nd episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network, and it's available on all Apple and Google platforms and other things too. If you can't find an episode that you've heard about and are looking for, or if you want to learn more about me and sign up for my regularly scheduled newsletter, please visit my website, vishkhanna.com. You can like Creative Control on Facebook, or follow the show on Facebook, or follow the show on Twitter at Vish Creative, or follow me at Vishkhanna. Also, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation. You know, there's a $6 or more tier now that gets you exclusive audio content from my exclusive audio archives. As we speak, I am shortly going to upload a thing where my wife and I had a college radio show, and on the penultimate episode of that show, everyone from Fugazi was on giving me life advice. So I'm going to upload that. So it's Brendan and Joe and Ian and Guy from Fugazi telling me how to live. It's fun. Anyway, go to patreon.com/Creative Control to learn more about supporting this show, and please do, and it all helps, and it might be more necessary than you think. Anyway, thanks again to live@masseyhall.com, where you can watch beautifully captured concerts by great Canadian artists. Also, Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf, Planet Bean Coffee, and Grandad's Donuts for their in-kind support for this show. Thanks as always to my friend Jim Guthrie for letting me use some of his music on the show. You can learn more about Jim at jimguthrie.org. And finally, thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Creative Control, and maybe subscribing to the show so you can keep tabs on it and telling your friends so that maybe they should listen and do the same things that you do. It all helps, and I appreciate it. I will go, but I will be back before you know it. So thank you, and bye for now.